She looked at me and said, "Are you going to kiss me or not?" The words didn't land softly. They cut through the quiet like glass, sharp and fragile at once, daring me to breathe wrong. For a moment, I forgot how to move. Her voice wasn't playful. It had weight in it, like she wasn't asking a question at all, but testing something between us. She was standing so close that the faint warmth of her body reached me, even though the space between us remained unbroken. A half step, maybe less. Her perfume lingered, not overwhelming, but enough to make me notice every inhale. She wasn't dressed for drama, just a simple blouse and loose hair falling to her shoulders. But it made her seem even more unreachable. A woman who didn't need attention to command it. I swallowed, too loudly, and she caught it. Her eyes flicked to my mouth before returning to mine, and I could see the faintest trace of a smile there, hidden but deliberate. I wanted to answer, to say something clever or at least steady, but words felt heavier than my tongue could carry. "You don't have to," I started, but my voice cracked, and I stopped. Her head tilted just slightly, like she was studying me. Like she already knew what I meant to say, but wanted to hear me stumble through it anyway. Her silence pressed harder than any words could have. I couldn't look away. I noticed the tiny things, her hand resting on the counter, fingers brushing against a coffee mug she hadn't touched in minutes. The faint curve of her shoulders, both relaxed and guarded at once. The way her lip caught against her teeth, almost absent-minded. The air felt too still, too rehearsed, like the room was holding its breath for me. "I'm not asking again," she said, but softer now, almost as though she regretted letting the words slip the first time. I took half a step closer. Not enough to touch, but enough that the space between us shrank to nothing but possibility. My hand brushed against hers, clumsy, deliberate, then pulling back too quickly. Her skin was cool, and it left a trace on me even after I withdrew. "You're shaking," she whispered. I hadn't realized I was until she said it. My hand flexed uselessly at my side, betraying me. Her eyes lingered on the gesture, and then back to mine. That quiet smile returned, not mocking but knowing. "Maybe you're not ready," she said. Something inside me rebelled at that, the idea that she had already decided for me. My chest tightened, my breath uneven. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I'd thought about this too often, that the image of her brushing her hair back, of her looking at me longer than necessary, had been haunting me in places where no one else noticed. But I said none of that. Instead, I let the silence hang. She seemed to understand anyway. The sound of rain tapped against the window, sudden and steady, filling the gap between us. She turned her head slightly toward it, and in that half-second, I saw the curve of her neck, the vulnerability there, the faint pulse just beneath her skin. I leaned in, finally, instinct pulling me where words had failed. But before I could close the distance, before breath could meet breath, the sound of the front door opening shattered the moment. We both froze. Her eyes snapped toward the hallway, then back to me, wide, sharp, caught. Neither of us moved. The door had closed again, whoever it was passing through without noticing us. Still, the spell had cracked, and neither of us dared pretend otherwise. She stepped back first, smoothing her blouse as if nothing had happened, but her hand lingered on the counter longer than it needed to. I wanted to ask what that was, what we almost did, but the words wouldn't form. Instead, I watched her carefully, trying to collect pieces of her expression the way someone might hold on to scraps of paper before the wind took them. "You're too young to look at me like that," she said finally. Her voice carried a weight that wasn't scolding, but defensive, as though she was trying to convince herself. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how quickly she'd built that wall again. "And you're too beautiful to say it like it's a curse," I replied before I could stop myself. Her eyes narrowed, just slightly. Not anger, surprise, maybe even curiosity. But instead of answering, she busied herself with the coffee mug she still hadn't touched, turning it slowly between her hands. I noticed the way her fingers gripped the ceramic, pale knuckles tightening, as though holding on to something steadier than me. She had been married once, I knew that much. The hushed mentions from neighbors, the empty ring finger that still bore the faint shadow of where gold had rested for years. No one talked about him, not directly. But I'd seen loneliness settle in her, subtle as dust. The drawn curtains, the silence of evenings, the way she always seemed to make too much food. I wasn't supposed to notice those things. But I did. "You don't know what you're asking for," she murmured, more to the mug than to me. Then tell me. My voice came out firmer than I meant. Her breath caught, and for a moment, she lifted her eyes to mine. There was something unguarded there, regret, maybe, or the ghost of a decision she couldn't take back. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. She set the mug down with a dull sound. She stepped closer again, though. Not much, but enough that I could see the faint line of her collarbone, the way her blouse shifted with her breathing. My shoulder brushed hers as I leaned past to grab my phone from the counter, and though it should have been nothing, she didn't move away. Her hand lingered on my arm for half a second longer than necessary as she shifted past me. That half second stretched in my head, looping endlessly, heavy with unspoken meaning. "You're making this complicated," she whispered, brushing her hair back, a nervous gesture I hadn't seen from her before. "And you're the one standing this close," I said softly, not trusting myself to breathe too loud. For a beat, neither of us spoke. The rain outside was steady now, wrapping the house in a cocoon of quiet. I could feel her presence as if it was pressing into me, warm, unrelenting. Her fingers brushed mine again, deliberate this time. She didn't take my hand, just let them rest there, touching, not claiming. It was enough. The rain hadn't let up. It drummed steady against the windows, a rhythm that made the silence between us feel sharper, more deliberate. She was standing so close that I could feel the brush of her sleeve against my arm every time either of us moved even slightly. "Someone could walk in," she said, her voice almost swallowed by the rain. "Then maybe we shouldn't be standing like this," I answered, though I didn't move back. Her eyes flicked up at me, quick, searching. "Maybe we shouldn't," she echoed, softer, as though saying the words might be enough to make them true. But neither of us stepped away. The hum of her phone vibrated against the counter, startling us both. A message lit the screen, her name glowing across it before it faded. She reached for it quickly, almost too quickly, her fingers brushing mine as she snatched it up. "Friend," she muttered, not looking at me. The explanation came too fast, too sharp, like she was afraid I'd read something in her silence. I didn't press, but the sound of my own heartbeat filled the space her words left empty. She set the phone down again, face down this time, as though burying it. Then she let out a breath, long, careful. Her hand smoothed down her blouse, a nervous gesture, one I'd begun to recognize. "You think this is simple," she said, not quite accusing, but with an edge. "I don't think anything about you is simple." The words slipped out before I could check them. Her lips parted slightly, a flicker of something moving through her face, surprise, maybe, or something softer, something she didn't want me to see. The air between us tightened. She shifted closer, almost imperceptibly, but enough that I caught the faint warmth of her breath when she spoke. "You don't understand what this would mean," she whispered. "Then explain it." Her silence stretched. She looked at me as though weighing whether I could carry the truth. Her eyes lingered too long, her hand resting on the counter as if steadying herself. The room felt too small, the rain too loud. My hand twitched, aching to bridge the space between us. She saw it. I knew she did, because her own fingers inched toward mine, hesitant, betraying her. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made us both snap our heads toward the door. My breath caught, hers too. A shadow passed beneath the crack of light, then faded. Whoever it was kept walking. We exhaled together, a quiet, shaky release. When her gaze returned to mine, something had shifted. She didn't pull back this time. Her hand grazed my arm, slow, deliberate, tracing a line from my wrist to the bend of my elbow. Every nerve seemed to ignite under that small, simple touch. "I shouldn't," she whispered. "Then stop." My voice was low, almost pleading. But she didn't stop. We stayed there, suspended in that breathless moment, her body leaning ever so slightly toward mine, my chest rising unevenly with every inhale. The kiss hovered, unclaimed, like a secret too fragile to hold. Neither of us moved away. The silence had become unbearable. Every stolen glance, every brush of her hand against mine, it had all been building towards something neither of us dared name. But tonight, the restraint began to crack. She stood at the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. Her back was to me, but her reflection wavered in the pain, her shoulders drawn tight, her jaw set. "You can't keep looking at me that way," she said, her voice low, almost breaking. "And what way is that?" My words came sharper than I intended, fueled by something that had been burning too long. She turned then, slowly, eyes meeting mine with a kind of defiance that looked too much like surrender. Like I'm the only one in the room. Like you don't see the years between us. I crossed the distance before I knew I was moving. My hand found the edge of the curtain just beside her, pinning me close without touching her yet. She didn't step back. She never stepped back. The years don't scare me, I whispered. Her breath caught. I reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. My fingers lingered against her temple, trailing down slowly, grazing the line of her cheek. Her eyes closed at the touch, just for a second, as if her body betrayed the words she wanted to speak. You think this is desire, she said softly, shaking her head. But it's more dangerous than that. People will talk. You'll regret it. I leaned closer, so close my lips hovered just beside her ear. The only thing I'll regret is walking away right now. Her hand gripped the fabric of my shirt, faint but undeniable. She held me there, suspended, as if deciding whether to push me back or pull me closer. You don't know what I've already lost, she whispered. The words trembled, not with fear, but with something deeper, confession, almost. Then let me be the one thing you don't lose, I said. Her chest rose against mine, her body leaning just slightly into the space she'd fought so hard to guard. I could feel the warmth of her breath on my neck, every inhale pulling me deeper into the gravity of her. You're reckless, she murmured. Only with you. The weight of everything we hadn't said pressed down in that moment. The loneliness she carried, the longing I tried to bury, the fear of being seen and judged. None of it mattered in the half-inch between our lips. Her fingers tightened at my shirt. My hand slid to the small of her back, tentative but firm, holding her as though she might disappear if I let go. We stood there, breath mingling, silence pounding like thunder in our ears. Her eyes opened, searching mine one last time for hesitation. There was none. She tilted forward, just barely. And then, from the hallway, a voice called her name. We froze, our lips an inch apart, hearts racing, the moment breaking in half. The voice that called her name faded into silence, but the damage had already been done. She pulled back, just enough to create a sliver of air between us, her hand still clutching my shirt as though she didn't realize she hadn't let go. When she did, it was quick, almost frantic, like she'd touched fire. I can't do this, she said, stepping away, one hand pressed against her chest, as if steadying herself. The words stung, but what unsettled me more was the tremor in her voice. It wasn't rejection, it was fear. What are you afraid of? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked toward the door, then back to me. The storm outside rattled the window, filling the silence until finally she whispered, that I won't be able to stop. I should have let her retreat. I should have given her space. Instead, I closed the distance again, slow but unrelenting. Her back brushed against the wall as I stepped into her hesitation. My hand hovered inches from her arm but didn't touch, waiting for permission she couldn't give. Then don't stop, I said. Her breath shuddered out, and for the first time, she didn't look away. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed on the counter again. She snatched it up, glanced at the screen, and this time her expression cracked wide open. The name lit across the display, the same one that had called her in the hallway. They know, she whispered, more to herself than to me. I frowned. Who? She shook her head, setting the phone down face down again, harder this time. Someone saw us. Or, they heard enough. She didn't elaborate, but the way her shoulders tensed told me this wasn't paranoia. It was certainty. A rush of panic hit me, followed by something sharper, possessiveness. The thought of someone else watching us, of them knowing, felt both terrifying and unbearable. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone, I said, too forcefully. She laughed, but it was bitter, almost broken. You really believe that? People live on explanations. And a woman like me. She stopped, catching the words before they finished. A woman like you what? Her lips parted, then pressed shut. The silence weighed heavy. She stepped past me suddenly, brushing too close, her shoulder grazing my chest. I turned, following her movement, my hand instinctively reaching out. My fingers caught her wrist before I could think. She froze. The pulse beneath my thumb raced faster than mine. Slowly, she turned back to face me. You don't understand the cost of this, she said, barely above a whisper. Then let me pay it, I replied. Her body stilled at my words, and something shifted in her expression, a mixture of longing and dread. She didn't pull her wrist free. Instead, she stepped closer, so close I could feel the warmth radiating off her skin. Her free hand hovered near my chest, not touching, trembling slightly in the space between us. "This is the last time I'll let you say that," she murmured. And yet, she didn't move away. The room felt smaller than it ever had. Every breath between us seemed amplified, heavy, thick with everything we had been circling around for days. My hand was still around her wrist, not holding her prisoner, but tethering her to something we both knew neither of us wanted to escape. "You should let go," she whispered, her voice unsteady. "I don't want to." Her eyes locked on mine, wide, vulnerable, but fierce in the way someone looks when they've already lost the fight and hate themselves for it. Slowly, deliberately, I released her wrist. But I didn't step back. Neither did she. Instead, she raised her hand, brushing her fingers against my jaw, tentative, trembling. "You don't know what this will do to me," she said. "To us," I corrected. Her lips parted, her breath fanning against my skin. We were close enough now that the warmth of her body radiated into me, filling every space I tried to keep contained. Her blouse brushed against my shirt as she leaned closer, and the nearness alone felt reckless, dangerous. "I swore I'd never cross this line again," she murmured, her voice so low I had to lean in to catch it. "And I can't stop standing here," I admitted. Her hand slid from my jaw to the back of my neck, fingers curling just enough to keep me from pulling away. My chest rose unevenly, my pulse hammering beneath her touch. For a moment, it felt like everything outside that room ceased to exist. The storm, the phone, the world beyond her walls. "This will ruin us," she whispered, but her forehead pressed gently against mine, her body betraying her words. "Or it will save us," I whispered back. The silence stretched, thick and merciless. My hands found her waist, resting lightly, waiting for her to flinch, to pull away. She didn't. Instead, her breath hitched, her body leaning imperceptibly into mine, closing what little distance remained. And then she kissed me. It wasn't cautious. It wasn't measured. It was raw, clumsy with restraint finally breaking. My hands gripped her waist tighter, her fingers tangling in my hair, pulling me closer as though the space between us had been unbearable for too long. When she finally pulled back, her lips still brushing mine, her eyes glistened. "Now you know," she said softly. I exhaled, shaky, overwhelmed, and nodded. "Now I know." Her hand slid down my chest, lingering, as though memorizing the moment. "This doesn't make it easy," she added. "No," I agreed, breathless. "But at least it's real." We stood there, pressed together in the storm-lit silence, everything unspoken now carved into the space between our bodies. For the first time, neither of us stepped away. The storm had quieted, leaving only the occasional drip of water from the eaves. The house felt strangely still, as if it too was holding its breath after what had just happened. We hadn't moved far from where she kissed me. We couldn't. Her hand was still resting lightly on my chest, my own fingers curved at her waist, holding but not pressing, as though one wrong shift might send everything shattering again. She looked at me for a long moment, her expression softer now, stripped of defenses. "I told myself this could never happen," she whispered. "And now that it has?" I asked. She let out a faint laugh, tired but genuine. "Now I can't imagine pretending it didn't." Her words loosened something inside me. All the silence, all the hesitation, the guilt and doubt, they hadn't erased what was between us. They had only made it clearer. I lifted my hand and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, my fingers brushing against her cheek. She leaned into it, closing her eyes for a moment like she was giving herself permission to stop fighting. When she opened them again, there was no trace of escape in them, only a quiet acceptance. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "So am I." My voice was low, steady. "But I'd rather be afraid with you than safe without you." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer, pressing her forehead against mine. The gesture was simple, tender, but it carried more weight than any kiss. My arm slid around her, and this time, she didn't hold back. She let herself lean fully against me, her body fitting into mine like it had been waiting too long. We stayed that way, wrapped in silence, listening to the soft drip of rain. Her breath evened against my shoulder, and I felt her hands settle at my back, fingers curling into the fabric of my shirt as if anchoring herself. "It's not just desire," she said finally, her words muffled against me. "I know. I haven't felt seen like this in years." I pulled back just enough to look at her. "Then don't let go now." She smiled faintly, not wide, not dramatic, but the kind of smile that carried years of weight falling away. Her hand found mine, threading her fingers through deliberately, firmly, as though sealing something neither of us could undo. We moved to the couch, still holding hands, settling close enough that our shoulders touched. No performance, no pretense, just two people who had finally stopped pretending. She rested her head against me, her breath slow and steady, and I pressed a kiss to her forehead, lingering there. Whatever waited beyond this moment, judgment, whispers, complications, it could come later. For now, there was only her, and the certainty of her hand in mine. And for the first time, it felt enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?